All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Headed Home podcast. Today we have the pleasure of introducing Alexis Papadakis Greenberg, a rising star in Denver's real estate market. Alexis is a 25-year Wall Street veteran who has held key roles at several of the nation's top financial firms. Her move to Colorado from New York City in 2018 with her husband and daughter allowed her to focus on her passion for design and marketing in the Colorado real estate markets. As someone who relocated her family and their two businesses from New York to the Denver area, she has become an expert on relocations to the Denver metro area, and that has been invaluable given the recent pandemic. Relocations have really exploded in the Denver market. What sets Alexis apart from other agents is her premier concierge service, advising on staging and having a plethora of contacts to get a home painted, repaired, sparkling, and ready to go and on the market. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our pleasure to introduce Alexis Papadakis Greenberg. Alexis, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you here.
We are. And so 25 years on Wall Street. Tell us about that. I mean, what was that like? What was your role there? Was it as intense as it sounds?
Still have good skin.
You do. I feel like I have I'm really interested to hear about your experiences in working in that way.
Oh yeah, it was a really, really tough upbringing, I would say. I started right on Wall Street right after college, and I stayed there for 25 years until I decided to move to Colorado, and I had like a major epiphany. So I came out here right before I moved out here. I was working for Starwood Capital in private equity, and so it's real estate private equity, and so it's a little different, right? They would buy 300 homes, 20 corporate buildings. Like the smallest transaction they would do would be $250 million. And wow. There were very large teams and lawyers, and pretty much what we would do is find the assets, check that the asset actually existed, a lot of numbers, but it wasn't like doing residential real estate where you're like on a one-on-one and it's more personal. But it was a great transition into Colorado real estate. I was coming out here looking at real estate. We were moving, and we'd come out here for like 2.5 days to find somewhere to live. And I had a really hard time finding a realtor. And I don't know, I just had the epiphany. Never once ever thought about selling real estate. I didn't even when I was in private equity real estate, I never thought like I was like in real estate like that. And I told my husband, and he was like, okay, like whatever. He's very easygoing. And so he was like, whatever you want to do. And I was like, I think I could sell real estate here, because everyone is in the mountains every time we want to go, see real estate. And so it worked out really well. We moved here end of 2018. I really wanted to take a year off. I took about 6 months off, got my license in April of 2019, and then did my first transaction in July of 2019. And I went to a real estate school because I just didn't think that I could do like the online school. I really wanted to do it in person. It was like the best decision I made, because the teacher was a legend, native, and he had been in real estate for over 50 years. And in part of the class, he incorporated a lot of things that you wouldn't know moving to Colorado and being a new agent, like, moving soil and radon and all types of things that we don't deal with in the big city. He was talking about it in class, and I was like, oh, wow, I need to know these things. So that was really, really, really good.
That's a perk, having a coach or a mentor or just a teacher like that to teach you the ins and outs.
Okay, I'm interested in, because New York, we've been to New York a couple times,
right?
And Colorado is very different than New York, obviously. But what made you guys decide to come to Colorado? Did you have any ties, or like how did that go?
We didn't know anyone, not a soul. And I started to see the migration. I would say 2016, there was a massive migration. People were selling their estates. Big wealthy families were selling their estates and moving to Colorado. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. Moving to Niwot and Boulder. And then my daughter was like, you guys should look at Colorado because everything is happening there. And so we came out to visit, and we did like a 2-week trip. We went to the springs, we did all the tourist stuff, we went to the mountains. We spent like 4 days in Denver, and we just fell in love. We were like, the weather's amazing, the people are amazing, the food is really good.
Okay, but did you go to Casa Bonita have you gone to Casa Bonita?
Might not.
I've not.
All right, Alexis. Well, it's opening in May again, so you just put that on your calendar because you have to do Casa Bonita.
The local favorite. It might have been shut down though, or what? It could have shut down during COVID. I don't know.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I don't know.
It suffered during COVID, and it just got bought by the South Park guys.
Yeah,
so I'm excited because for years people were like, "You got to go to Casa Bonita."
Yeah,
and I was like, "Okay," but we just never got.
It was so bad, but it's such a weird experience. It'll be interesting to see. Anyway, total aside, but important to note.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting was right before we decided to move, right? We had been through a tropical storm. They called it a tropical storm. It was like a hurricane. And we didn't have power for 6 weeks. And that was really, really tough. And we were like, I just kept thinking like life in New York is no longer sustainable. That's all I kept thinking.
Yeah.
And it was weird because like during 9/11, I used to work in the World Trade Center for a very long time. That was like my first job out of school. And I had that same feeling. When I worked in the World Trade Center, I was like, I got to leave. I got to get out. I got to go. I kept saying that. And, I quit my job. I didn't have another job. And my boss, the CEO, was like, where are you going? We'll make a counter offer. You're not leaving. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I just got to leave here, this building. I got to go. And so when I had that same feeling all those years later, like I need to leave, I need to get out of here. My husband was like, you have a really good track record. We're just going to, if you really feel that strongly about it, let's go. And, it turned out that our hometown was kind of like ground zero for COVID. Wow. And it was like the first town that got hit in New York, and they had military shutdown, and it was insane. So, I feel like we got out right in time. We would have had a very different experience. I think we would have moved here, during COVID, because they gave us a whole year to kind of get settled in, get my business going. And it was a really good timing.
Wow. That intuition, your intuition, that's pretty right on. I mean, that's deep. Have you always been like that? Like always. In other situations too?
Always. And that's why I listen, I'm like,
right.
Something's saying, let's go.
Well, and I think a lot of people have that, and then they don't listen, and they, and then that causes a lot of like anxiety. And I feel like the older I've gotten, I like start to like listen more quickly, like when I feel something, because I do feel like your body knows when something is not right or not working, and being in tune with that is really important.
You should have been in tune with it when you were driving today.
Okay.
And, like, you should have known a cop was doing radar.
Alexis, right before this, I got pulled over, and I've not been pulled over for years and years and years. And then like a couple months ago, I got pulled over, and then I got pulled over.
It's becoming a trend. You drive a lot.
I can't believe they're even still doing that. Like, are they still doing that? Because I don't even see officers anywhere.
Well, let me tell you, I will tell you where they get you. In Lakewood, it's always on Morrison Road for me. So there you go. I'll just I got to start taking a different route apparently. But
yes.
Anyway, thanks, babe.
Yeah, I had to just make sure I got that in there. Okay, so Wall Street and real estate, and it sounds like there were some connections there. But what sort of like skill sets translated?
I think that when I worked on Wall Street, I was like the right hand to a CEO my whole life, right? And I handled absolutely everything for the guys I worked for, right? And so not only did I do all of the business planning and controlling and working on everything in their whole lives, I also managed all of their estates and all of the employees that worked on these estates and stuff like that. And so I was always involved with the real estate. We did massive renovations, $100 million, $150 million in renovations and big estates and stuff. So I was always involved with it. But I think a lot of the skills that carried over was the fact that I could handle a lot of things at the same time. And a lot of people don't understand, but real estate is not like, what really helped me was having business background, right? It wasn't like I was just like, had no business background. And then I'm like this is a very complicated business because I get a lot of questions from friends or people that are thinking about getting into real estate. And I'm like, well, let me tell you the Eat True Hollywood story. All right. This is, we don't all drink lattes all day,
Right.
Like selling sunset. Right. And so there's a lot of things that you have to know to do. You got to do your own marketing. You got to be good on the computer. You got to have an eye for, things that can go wrong, renovations. You really have to be like a jack of all trades at a high level.
Yeah. And relationships are so important too. Coming out here, not knowing anybody, was that hard for you? Like, how did you build your clientele up?
I started so I'm a Tony Robbins person, right? And I believe in proximity is power. And, I went to work at a firm that was a top firm in Cherry Creek. I started at Coldwell Banker Devonshire back then. And there were a lot of agents there that had really, really beautiful listings. And so none of them did open houses back then. No one in that office did open houses when I started there. And immediately I was like, okay, I'll just start doing open houses. I met people that invited me to events. I made really good friends early on who were really plugged in Denver and were like, having charity events at their homes. So anything I was invited to, I would go. And that's the other thing that I try to tell like new agents or people that want to get in. You can't sell real estate from the inside of your house, right? And so if it's different for everybody, right? So if you're, I know a great agent who is a mom, right? And so her whole sphere are other moms. And so all of her clients are moms with children that are like her children's age. And it works great for her. She sells from, she goes from August to May, June. And that's the season that she sells. And then she takes the whole summer off. But she's incredibly type A and very organized. And that's her sphere, right? But for me, I didn't have young children. My kids are all grown. And so it was a different network of people that I was tapping into, right? A lot of empty nesters, high net worth individuals. So anything I was invited to, I would go. And let me tell you something very different than New York. New York is not a very social place, believe it or not. Most people work 12, 14-hour days. It's the hustle back into, getting to the office, getting home. And Colorado is really social. And that was a little exhausting. And me and my husband, we were not used to going out like every night or every other night. But like, we didn't want to turn people down because people here are very active. And it was good for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And it sounds like probably out of your comfort zone too, right? Like putting yourself out there, putting yourself in situations where you weren't used to being in, but sounds like that's just kind of the nature of the beast, to get started in a competitive industry like real estate, being brand new to the state.
Mm-hmm. And then I got really lucky. I got invited to a birthday party, someone I didn't know. And I meet this lady's friend, and she was selling her house, and she was really all upset about it because um, she was telling me the agent was being really um, nasty about her house and telling her house was just gross and that no one wanted it. And she was crying. And she was like, would you come to my house and tell me if you think it's gross? And I was like,
oh my gosh.
Sure, I'll go take a look and give you my honest opinion, right? And it was a very interesting, beautiful house in Boulder. And the it was completely decorated in Mackenzie Child. So I don't know if you guys know that brand.
No.
But Mackenzie Child is kind of like an Alice in Wonderland. Everything is black and white.
Okay.
Gold with red accents.
Okay.
And it's people collect this stuff. And I didn't even know that they made furniture. They made curtains and everything you could think of. This whole house was decorated in Mackenzie Child. But that was a really easy fix, because she wasn't even living there anymore. So we were like, well, let's get it. You just need to stage it, really.
Right.
It's hard for people to see themselves in a property, when it has so much, something so specific to someone's style.
Mm-hmm.
And, it took us about $8,000. We did a paint job. We made a beautiful, like neutral, white stone kind of color. I changed a lot of the lighting, and we had over 90 people come to the open house that weekend.
Wow.
And a lot of people came because they couldn't believe that it was the same house from the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And it sold that weekend, and it sold for a lot over asking. But it was great because her husband became a huge fan of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up doing a lot of business together. And he owns a really big company in Colorado. And so anyone who's relocating, any big CEO or C-level friend of his or colleague that's relocating to Colorado, he refers them. And so it was
that's
great.
awesome.
At one party that I did not want to go to.
Of one birthday party.
One birthday party that I thought, this is a little awkward. I don't know this person at all, but here I come, like with a little birthday gift,
Mm-hmm.
It was,
but I think I think it's important what you said, because I feel like a lot of times, people call that luck, but I mean, you're also like putting yourself in situations where you can connect with people that are going to support your business and support what you're doing, and you can support them and what they're doing as well. And so I think like putting yourself out there really afforded you that opportunity, to do that. Did you have, any, as you kind of got into this, like systems and structures that have kept you successful with real estate, or things that have worked well for you besides just making sure that you're like getting out and making new connections and meeting people?
Well, the one thing that I really thought about a lot was that I didn't know Colorado, right? And when I moved here, I really wanted to work at Live Sotheby's. That was like my dream, because I did a lot of my business at Live Sotheby's in New York.
Okay.
And in Rhode Island and Florida and all these different estates that we were running, right? And I had a big meeting with a managing broker there, and he was like, you will never sell real estate in Colorado. And he was a New Yorker, but he had been here for over 25 years. And he was like, you'll never sell real estate in Colorado. You don't even know the roads here. Colorado's very cliquey. especially in the luxury market. And he was just, he said, you have potential because you have this business background, but I don't think you're ever going to sell real estate here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like blown away. I was like, I work for the top financial brains in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went to Ivy League school. I'm smart. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? I sold my house in New York. I quit my big job. Here I am. Yeah. And so that really got the wheels turning and got the fire going, because I had my Jerry Maguire moment where I was like, okay. I cried in my car for 30 minutes, which I have never cried in my life, especially I've had some really tough interviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cried in my car for 30 minutes, called my husband. I was like, these people don't want me. They don't want me here. And he was like, wake up. You have worked for some really, really tough people. You can do this. And then I started thinking, well, I may not know the roads here, but I'm going to become an expert in the contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to take a lot of classes. Whenever I'm not working with a client or doing an open house, I'm going to be learning. And I kind of aligned myself with a lot of agents that were real hitters in Colorado. And I just pretty much, whatever they were doing, I was doing. Whatever systems they had, I had. And I just copied everything that they were doing in terms of CRM, high-end photographers, anything that they were doing, which was great because it was like a cheat sheet for me, right? I didn't have to find the best plumbers because they had the best plumbers. I didn't have to find the best stagers because they had stagers, right? So that really, really worked out well for me. And then I did really, really well my first 6 months, and I got hired by Los Sotheby's.
and then COVID hit.
And then COVID hit.
And that was a really interesting time in the market. How'd you handle that?
Well, it was interesting because I had $6 million under contract, and they announced that we were going to close for 2 weeks, and every contract got canceled.
Oh,
every single one of them. And I was like, oh, wow. It's like,
right.
It was like the end of the world is here. Oh my God. But all those guys came back in different formats. It was really interesting. Like, people were like, you know what? I don't want to buy that expensive condo downtown. I want out of the city. I want a cabin in a remote place outside of Denver. So everybody started moving and shifting what they were doing. People were relocating their parents. So it was a big shift,
I feel like it would almost work in your advantage too. The fact that you were newer and just getting used to Colorado. There was a huge rush of new buyers coming from other states and trying to get into the mountains. Do you feel like it worked as an advantage to you?
Yeah, it was really, really good, transition, because I had relocated, right? We sold our house.
Right.
We moved our businesses, right? My husband had a huge insurance agency, and he was poised for COVID because he was remote, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, getting all of his employees to go remote when they were locked out of their offices for 10 months.
Wow.
The shift in New York to here was very different. New York was completely closed, right? You couldn't sell real estate for 9 months, right? We were closed for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we had, it was like kind of like business as usual, other than all the precautions that we had to take. But it was just a shift in all ways you could think of. People went from buying condos to buying homes. People went from like, I want, a 4-bedroom house to I want a mother-in-law house with my house. And it was good,
Well, rates were extremely low. The market's obviously changed drastically since then, just over the past 2 or 3 years. There's been a huge shift in interest rates. I just read a stat, over 60% of homeowners in the US have an interest rate at around 3%. So a lot of people are staying put right now. Many realtors and lenders are struggling. Our business is down quite a bit from 2020 and 2021. What's business looking like for you since the rates jumped? And, what are some strategies that you're kind of implementing to stay productive?
Yeah. So, my business is down, but not much. I do a lot of my work in the winter time. It's like opposite of everybody, but, I think that you have to be really educated now more than ever. You have to really know how to do the buy down rates programs, right?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many people I'm speaking to that are thinking about moving, that have never heard of it. All right. So I don't think that agents are doing enough of a job of explaining how to do a buy down program. And I don't know why so many people are intimidated with the math, because it's really, not that difficult, right? It's kind of an estimate, right? And we have spreadsheets and videos and all types of things that I've given to friends and clients, and they're like, oh, okay. So it's not that scary, right? If you can get the seller to offer a concession, you could use that money to buy down the interest rates. Still a very good time to buy, because you can negotiate the price, you can negotiate the interest rate.
And you can refinance out of that buy down without any penalty. And any leftover buy down that didn't go towards buying the rate down, if you refinance before that temporary buy down period is up, you can actually put that towards the loan balance when you do a refinance. So yeah, I agree. It's a great incentive for buyers right now. So you stay educated on that.
Yeah. I mean, you really have to understand it to be able to say it with confidence, right? And that's the thing that I'm noticing the most right now, how little people educate themselves, and then in turn they can't teach it to their clients. I don't think there's enough information out there on it, personally.
So one of the things,
I agree.
we really value education just in general and every part of our life. And one of the things we talk to our kids a lot about and try to model is like, hey, most of the lessons that we learn, and are from things that maybe didn't go right, or mistakes that we had. And so we talk very openly about that in our family, but I'm interested to hear, is there something that sticks out for you, either in, it could have been in your previous career, but like a mistake or like a really important lesson that you learned that's kind of stuck with you?
I would say maybe do more research, right? Because every idea that would come across, I would be like, okay, I'll do it, right? And real estate is a very expensive business, right? So I spend a lot of money trying out different things and stuff. And looking back, I'm like, oh wow, that was just a big silly mistake kind of thing, right? But it was, I think having a better handle, right, on your expenses, because it's a business. There's a lot of money coming in, there's a lot of money going out. And so, vetting more, like all these new ideas a little bit better. But they all led to something else. So it's like, I never kind of look at anything as a regret, because I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't have done that.
Totally.
And now I'm full circle, right? So, I've been out, I've experienced different companies and different kind of programs and stuff like that. And now I'm back at Coldwell Banker Global Luxury, which is where I started. They changed their name from Coldwell Banker Devonshire. Now they're the Global Luxury Office of Colorado. And, it's great to be back to where I first started. It's really, with different eyes, like, now I've done, close to $100 million in sales in about 3 years.
Oof.
And I do a lot of referrals. So a lot of my business is referrals outside of Colorado.
Okay.
Florida, New York, different places that I've done deals, but I kind of like it. I do a little bit of everything. I still do some commercial because that's my background. Um, but nothing it's just by luck or word of mouth. I don't really advertise like that, but
Well, I think though, just you make it sound simple, putting yourself out there and just, I think you said anything you're invited to, you go to. I mean, that's just a really simple strategy, but not everybody does that,
nobody I know does it.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost
what's that book like by Simon Sinek? It's like Never Eat Alone. Is it Never Eat Alone?
Yeah,
I might have made that up.
Never Eat Alone. Or there's a movie, I think, with Jim Carrey. Yes, Man is what it reminds me of, where you just kind of say yes to everything that you're invited to, and then special things start to happen.
Will you do the laundry?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Done.
I think that's
that was kind of like a Wall Street philosophy, right?
Okay.
Somebody told me that long time ago.
Yeah.
Always say yes to everything. And so people give you tickets to events, right? And all types of events. And, even if you're not going to use them, you may have a friend or kids or somebody that wants them, right? And so it was just a habit of just, yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
One, it's a really simple strategy. And I think that can be a key takeaway for our listeners, no matter what industry you're in. Say yes more, and even if it feels like it's a little outside of your comfort zone, try it out and see what happens, and good things will come from it. But no, I think that's great that you've built your business that way. How do you stay driven? Like what drives you every day? Like what are you passionate about, long term in the real estate game?
Now, I really love the game. I think the constant, how do we get bigger, how do we do better, right? I've done a lot of real estate in Colorado and a lot of really not pleasant real estate. I've been in a lot of smelly, a lot of dirty homes, and in my mind I was like, I really want to do some beautiful listings. Why can't I just have some listings that have some beautiful art or some beautiful, it's just beautiful to be in the space, right? It's inspiring. And I think that I just really like manifesting, and I like the game of like, okay, the work. It has to be, you're only driven if your plans are bigger than you, kind of thing. And I listen to a lot of different people that are inspiring. So I stay motivated that way.
Are there a couple you can share? Are you a couple? Are there a couple that you can share there, whether it's a podcast or books or any
I love Ed
stuff?
Milet.
Yeah.
He's like one of my favorites.
Did you read his book he came out with like within the last year? The Power
One More?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really good
book.
Like,
I don't really cry when I read books, but I cried in that book. I really liked it.
Yeah, he's kind of, he's a Tony Robbins guy, right? But he's a little bit more practical, than Tony, even though a lot of Tony's stuff, his new stuff, right? Where you hear his interviews now, I love it because he's really talking about the market right now, right? And he's been saying winter is coming for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I really like them. I love Abraham Hicks, all that manifestation stuff with her, like the laws of the universe and laws of attraction. People say, it's really not about working so hard, though I did work super hard. But it's working hard with the right mindset.
Yeah.
That's what I think the big difference is. But, I have big goals. I would love to open a women's shelter for domestic violence. That's my big one. One where people can bring their pets, because I learned that A lot of women don't leave a domestic violence situation because they can't bring their pets with them. And there are horrible things to happen to people's pets when they leave them behind. And so there's a shelter down in the Springs that does really super well, and people can bring their pets, and they're completely privately owned, and they do big things. And I was like, wow, we could do something like that for women. I mean, Denver only has less than 100 beds, and they turn away 18,000 women a year.
Wow.
So that's my big one. That's my big. We'll have another interview in 5 years and see.
I think that's great. I can't wait to hear about that. I think that's a really, really cool goal. And I like that it's like outside of, like the business, because I do think there's, lots of different things that are important in your life and things that you feel passionate about. And I think that's really cool. I was there, I know you've done a ton of transactions. Was there like a story or a particularly challenging transaction that you've handled, and how you maybe overcame any obstacles to get it closed, or any experience like that?
Yeah, my first client in Colorado this is a fun story. He was an engineer, and we did 65 showings. And what was great was that he was a gas engineer for Excel Power. And so he knows where every gas line in the state of Colorado is, and where they're storing gas. And, every neighborhood we go to, he'd be like, I can't live here because there's gas line over here, there's gas lines over there. It was great because I saw every
you probably learned a lot about Colorado in your first transaction.
I did. And we get to house number 40 and I'm like, oh God, this is never going to happen. House 45, 50, 55. And I'm going, oh my goodness, and I'm like thinking, I need to fire this man. This is never going to work. And then, it was really rewarding in the end because, not only did he find an incredible house, he was a VA, and it was a big, complicated VA loan, and his fees were incredibly expensive. I mean, by taking a look at his finances and what he was trying to do, we were able to save him like hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest and stuff. And now he's just a happy person because, he's got like over $350,000 in equity in that house.
That's so cool.
God, that's awesome.
And that happened right before COVID.
And you learned where all of the gas, all of those things.
I learned where all the gas is, and now when I meet an engineer, I just cringe. Like I'm like, oh, why don't you work with my friend?
Yeah, no, that's just definitely a specific personality type. They're very detailed. Every time I come across an engineer on a loan application too, I really enjoy working with them, because they follow everything that you're giving them. But you're right. I mean,
feel like you're good because you're like really detailed.
Yeah,
so
I work well with them, but they are different.
They make you work
a different type. Yeah, they do.
So Alexis, I was in college. I started out as a aerospace engineering major. Nothing about me should be an engineer. Like my attention to detail, like I'm just more of a big picture person. I'm very social, and so, but I did see like a very clear picture of what an engineer's brain should look like, and it ain't mine.
Yeah, it's different. I love working with them, but that's awesome. That was your very first client that you helped?
First client, 65 showings.
Whew. You did it.
I did it, and we did it big because he's in a beautiful house in Westminster, and he got it at the right price. I think we were able to negotiate down. Like it was listed for $479. We closed at $432. it was just perfect timing.
That's awesome.
You know, an estate sale kind of thing. And, you know, there was nothing wrong with this house. Although, you know, it was just a big box, but it was really beautifully maintained. But no one can see the beauty of like, and I think that's my big asset is that I can go in and say, you know, this house just needs this paint.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's put a fireplace in here and then let's put in some walls and then make it, instead of having a big, you know, 3,000 square foot basement that it's overwhelming because people are like, what do I do with the space? You know?
Yeah. And buyers need to have that picture painted. I know I'm that type too.
Intended.
Like, yeah. Right. But I do think that's a huge asset from being a realtor, just to be able to show someone while they're standing there what it could look like. It's really helpful for buyers because they just don't know. But it's I love that story though, because like that's what I love about, you know, just being in this industry and actually seeing that closing happen and then seeing the appreciation happen right after that. I mean, it's really life-changing in terms of net worth and just financial possibilities for buyers. So that's awesome. One of the last questions here, we'll wrap this up, but I want to ask you, and we ask a lot of our guests this, if you could write a book tomorrow, what would you write that book about?
It really would be about giving, I think, you know. I read a book that was really, what was it called now? It was about being a connector and giving, right? And if you're really genuine about your connections with people, if you really care about people, right, then it's really rewarding. You could really get things, you get to know people differently, right? And so I think for me, it would be about giving, connecting and giving. How do you do that? And, you know, I think that's why I was really successful, because I was really good at going out and networking and meeting total strangers and getting to know people on a one-to-one basis. And they wanted to know me and hang out and have fun together. So, you know, it's really been my secret sauce, is just, you know, not everyone you meet you're going to love and want to get to know, but there are people out there that are really amazing, you know, and all it takes is one, two. That's what I love about Colorado, because people here are so open and friendly, right?
Yeah.
And you just never know where that conversation is going to go. We used to prepare before we would go to the supermarket, because people would be like, hey, what are you doing today? Right? And we would be like,
so funny.
We're not doing anything. And they'd be like, what? And I'm like, no, really, tell me, what are you going to do today? And me and my husband, we started like, well, we got to have a plan, right?
Like, listen, what's our story? We got to get it together.
What's our story so we don't feel like losers? But yeah, it's really, you know, you got to love people.
Yeah. And I think, like you're saying, like it's almost like building up that mindset of, I'm just here to add value. I'm here to like pour into this relationship, and whatever comes from it, great. But I know if I go into it with that mentality, it's going to be a positive outcome, whether that results in business for me or for somebody else or not. It at least is going to result in a positive interaction and maybe a long-term relationship, a friendship, which is super valuable, you know, in this industry. So I love that. Where can our listeners find you online?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and so it's just Alexis Papadakis Greenberg. I also have a business page on there. I have a, you know, moving to Colorado from New York webpage that does really well. And I have a YouTube channel I've been working on now that's called Keeping It Real Estate. Keeping It Real Estate.
Got it. I like it.
So that's going to be exciting, because I'm going to do some videos that maybe will make me the most popular agent with other agents, but I think that it'll be really good for the consumer to understand what they're getting into.
I have a feeling it'll be real, I mean, I know that I know that's the title, but I mean that, like, just talking to you, like, you come across as very authentic and just like giving information, but in a way that's kind of designed to help people and just honest and transparent. You're going to blow up on YouTube.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us today, Alexis, and listeners. We'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
All right. See ya.